With the release of Master Mode 7, there has been a new best sword added to the game, and that is the Dark Claymore. The Dark Claymore costs well over 650 million coins, and I have one. The Dark Claymore has some of the most absurd stats I've ever seen on a weapon. It gives 500 damage, which is the same as a giant sword, and it also gives 100 strength. On top of that, it has a new ability, which gives it a swing range of 5, effectively giving you reach. Saying that this sword is just good is a massive understatement, as this sword is incredibly powerful, and in this video I'm going to be maxing it out and testing its limitations, along with talking about whether or not I think this sword is going to be useful. Quick recap, this item was added with Master Mode 7 and is a drop from bedrock chests in Master Mode 7. Opening this item costs 50 mil, but of course once you have opened it, it is a massive profit margin because it sells for around 650 mil. Currently, although there is no known drop rate, the best accurate estimate is between 1 in 20 and 1 in 50 runs will drop a Dark Claymore. Of course, however, M7 is extremely difficult and there aren't very many parties that can complete it effectively, so at the moment, these drops will stay extremely rare and extremely expensive. Now that we've looked at the base stats of this item and how you get it, I want to look into how we can be most effective in maxing it out. Although some people might think that this would be a really good item for One For All, because of the recent changes to this enchant, that isn't really the case. However, because I am interested in doing some science, I'm going to be trying out a number of different enchant setups, starting with how well it performs while clean. It looks like while clean, this weapon does 415,000 damage, and this is while using an Ender Dragon pet. For a clean weapon outside of dungeons, this is pretty absurd in my opinion, but now I want to try out with a couple of different enchants, starting with what I just said wouldn't be that great, which is One For All. I'm actually really glad that I bought this enchant because I've just learned that you actually can't apply One For All to the Dark Claymore, which is really interesting. I don't know exactly why that is yet, but it looks like we'll probably be doing a lot of science in this video. I realize if we're doing some science, I should probably try out if you can put any ultimate enchant onto the Dark Claymore, and it looks like the answer is no. My assumption for this is that this is their attempt to balance it and not make it too OP, but it is a very odd thing. This also means, however, that Chimera Dark Claymores are never going to exist because you can't put Chimera onto the Dark Claymore. To go ahead in maxing this weapon, I'm going to start by buying all the enchants that I need, and most of them are in fact going to be tier 7. Of course, this process of buying enchants is probably going to be extremely boring, so I'm going to just make a montage and skip through all of these, but I do recommend that you take a quick note of my purse before and afterwards. With that, and having spent over around 200 million coins on these enchants, I'm pretty sure that's all I'm going to care about for now. I could go ahead and put First Strike and Cleave on this if I really wanted to max out its damage, but I don't think I'm going to care about that quite yet. I'm also probably going to end up putting Looting 5 on this later, but once again, I don't care for this video. In the interest of science, I'm now going to try it out with just enchants, and that means no reforge or anything like that, and this is now dealing 610,000 damage, which is very good. I also just realized in theory I could also be trying this out with a tucked chestplate, but I really don't think that the damage difference is big enough for me to care, and I'm gonna try to be consistent with what I had in the beginning. The next thing that I have to do is apply Hot Potato Books, so that's going to be 10 regular Hot Potato Books and 5 Fuming Hot Potato Books. This is really cheap in comparison to the rest of what I've just done, and I'm pretty sure this will also help its damage quite a bit. I also went ahead and bought a recomp for this, and so now all I need to max this out is going to be a Witherblood. I realized there actually is one more thing that I could do, and that's an Art of War, and you know what, I might as well go buy it because I have the money too. Here is another quick little enchanting montage that I think just looks cool because of all the different things that I'm applying to it, and with that I've actually maxed out this weapon except for dungeon stats. When this item was first released, it actually couldn't have stars applied to it, which meant that a lot of people thought it was just kind of gonna be awful because there was no use for it outside of dungeons, except recently they added it so that you can in fact add stars to it using Wither Essence. Applying all 5 stars to this weapon is extremely expensive in terms of Wither Essence, and I just happened to not have enough because I think I sold some recently, and so I was able to apply 4 stars, and I'm going to get somebody else to apply the 5th star. With this 5th star now applied, it's effectively maxed out for non-Master Mode dungeons. However, of course, it's probably going to be most useful in Master Mode, so I am going to go ahead and apply some Master Stars as well. For some really weird reason, there were no second Master Stars on the auction house, so I had to go on a little bit of a witch hunt to find them, but now I have the first 4 Master Stars, and I'm going to be applying them to the Dark Claymore. For now, I am not going to be applying the 5th Master Star, and that's because it's like 140 million coins, and for now, I think I'm good, and I'll wait a little while until those drop into a lower price. With this as maxed out as I want it for now, I can go ahead and test the out of dungeons damage with it, and it looks like I'm going to be dealing around 800,000 damage per hit with this, which is really good, and for some reference, I have a not maxed for damage Hyperion, and it is dealing 450,000 damage outside of dungeons. You can also, of course, somewhat unfairly compare this to a Terminator, which when it crits deals around 400 to 450,000 damage. Of course, this also has the perk of being a bow, so the damage doesn't really quite equate, but really just all you have to care about is this is really, really good. One of the first other things that comes to mind for this weapon is using it for ghosts. Of course, this one is enchanted with Smite, so I don't really think that I'd want to use this specific weapon for doing ghosts, but if you went ahead and enchanted it with Sharpness 7 and then used something like a Golden Dragon, I'm guessing you could probably almost one-shot ghosts with this. One other thing that you could do if you really wanted to optimize for single hit damage would be to use Prosecute 6 instead of Execute 6. With this on top of using a Golden Dragon and enchanting this with Sharpness 7, I'm pretty sure that you could one-tap ghosts with this. This also means that if you were using a Soul Whip and you're swapping between the two, you could probably one-tap ghosts with a Soul Whip like this, meaning that ghost grinding may become significantly more effective now. Actually, just because I was curious, I ended up trying it out, and if you are using Fire Aspect, you actually can one-tap ghosts with the Fire Aspect and Venomous abilities combined. This also means that if you were to go ahead and enchant this with Sharpness and Prosecute, I'm almost certain that you'd be able to one-tap without even needing these, and so this means that this is really, really powerful. If you used a Golden Dragon on top of that, this becomes an extremely good money-making method, and you might not even have to use a Soul Whip to swap. This is also because, of course, it has a long reach ability, which makes it so that if you aren't using a Soul Whip, you can still hit them from very far away. I really actually like this, and I think that this could be a very powerful use for this weapon. Okay, so I had kind of planned for this video to be about how good this weapon is inside of dungeons, but now I've realized it's actually ridiculously good outside of dungeons too. So just for the sake of science, I'm going to apply a Sharpness 7 book to this weapon and see just how good it is for ghosts. Yes, I know this kind of might make you cringe, and it's going to make me cringe a little bit as well, but I think that this could actually just be a very, very powerful weapon now. With Sharpness 7 now applied, I am dealing 950,000 damage per hit, and because the first tick of Fire Aspect applies as soon as you hit the mob, that means I am effectively one-tapping all of these, which is really, really good. This also means that if I go ahead and apply Looting 5 to this will be a really, really good weapon for grinding ghosts because Looting 5 is extremely powerful for ghosts. I have a feeling with the addition of this weapon, ghost grinding is going to become a lot more effective and a lot more meta. However, now that I'm done being sidetracked by how good this weapon is for doing ghosts, I'm also going to be trying out kind of what I'm assuming will be the main use of this weapon, which is dungeons. I'm going to first try out some floor 7, and then I'm also going to be going into some master mode floors just to see exactly how good this weapon is. Of course, just because of how good this weapon's damage is, it will be very good for the Berserk class. However, on top of that, its extra reach means that it'll probably be better for clearing and for bosses. So I spent a while playing around with this weapon in both regular floors and master floors, and the consensus is it's really good. It's not really a surprise that this produces the best damage in the entire game just because it has the best stats in the entire game. However, it does have a few downsides. The first thing I have to note about it is it's just kind of clunky to use. Because I'm just so used to a 3-block reach distance, trying to play with 5-block reach is really awkward. I wouldn't know right now if I were hitting them or not, and that's kind of just weird to get used to. Of course, the way to resolve this is just for me to use this weapon more, but it also kind of feels a little bit awkwardly laggy because of the fact that the hits have to be processed differently than if it were just a regular reach distance. Of course, the things that this is most useful for are mini-bosses and boss DPS. Of course, mini-bosses are pretty self-explanatory, but I feel like I should elaborate on the fact that it is useful for bosses, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be most useful for Phase 4, because unfortunately, you can't actually actually use this to deal damage to Goldor in phase 3, just because as soon as you're within reach to actually hit him, he's killing you. Of course, I've mostly just been talking about this weapon and the kind of cool ability that's been added with it, but I feel like I should also comment on how they're going to expand on this ability in future updates. In my opinion, I really like this weapon, and I really like the fact that they're trying to expand on some of the pretty core gameplay mechanics of Skyblock, but there are a few things I'd like to see added onto this. In my opinion, the best change that the admins could add to this would be to add a sort of sweeping edge ability that Minecraft has in 1.9+, and the reason that I think this is because although this is a useful weapon for dealing with mini-bosses and dealing boss DPS, it really sucks for clearing just because cleave doesn't have nearly enough radius to be useful. If there were some sort of sweeping edge, but not quite like cleave, I don't really know either, but I think this could make it really interesting, and it would make this weapon in particular feel extra special. Right now, this weapon kind of just sits at an interesting place in the meta. It's significantly better than most other damage weapons, and is comparable to a better giant sword. Despite how good it is, in my opinion, it doesn't quite justify its cost yet. It is still a very expensive weapon, and getting it to a point where it's really good is extremely expensive as well, because you can't use ultimate enchants. I also just now realized why this can't use ultimate enchants, and that's because it's not actually a sword, it is a longsword. This means that in future updates there might be ultimate enchants that are designed exclusively for longswords, and in that case this will become an extremely good weapon depending on how good those ultimate enchants are. For the time being, I'd probably say that this weapon is good but not worth it. However, it does indicate that there will be additions to this gameplay mechanic in the future. I have this sneaking suspicion that once the Nether update is released, this will become a very, very good weapon. Of course, they might add some sort of better longsword that makes this entirely useless, but just because of how difficult this is to obtain, I somewhat doubt that. With that, that just about wraps it up for this video, and if you're interested in watching more of this item and update review kind of content, there will be plenty coming soon with the addition of the Nether update and all the other updates that have been happening recently. If you specifically would like me to make a video that goes over the new Floor 7, please do comment that down below, because I'm not really sure whether or not you guys need that. If that is something that you're interested in, please do let me know. Thank you all very, very much for watching me spend over 1 billion coins on this item. I'll see you guys later, and adios.